Good evening. Welcome to the Durham District School Board meeting of September 18th, the first board meeting of the new school year. This meeting is called to order in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. I give this land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississaugas peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. I'm not sure who's doing it. Is online? I believe the O Canada is on as virtual. So if everybody would please stand if you were able for O Canada. Thank you, R.H. Cornish, for the O Canada. Do we have any declarations of interest at this time? Hearing none, there's no statements of declaration at this time. Before we begin with the agenda this evening and actually the adoption of the agenda, I'd like to note that we have a new code of conduct for public meetings in place that is intended to ensure a safe and respectful environment for everyone in attendance. It encompasses our previous approaches to public attendance at our meetings, but it puts it in writing to make expectations and consequences clear for all. It is my hope that we have a successful and respectful meeting this evening. The Code of Conduct will be displayed at each public meeting and is available on our website. We have the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as distributed? Trustee Thatcher, Trustee Morton, all in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to item 6, we have 6 sets of minutes. What I would like is that if we could have a motion that to approve, that the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 15th, the continuation of the May 15th board meeting on May 23rd, and the special meeting of June 5th be received. Trustee Morton, Trustee Oldfield, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And then I can have another motion that the draft minutes of the regular board meeting of June 19th, 2023, and the special board meetings of July 10th and August 2nd, 2023 be approved. Trustee Miller, Trustee Arsenault. All those in favor? Opposed? Those minutes are carried. Moving on to item number 7 is the ministry memorandum. So I will pass this over to Director Camille Williams-Taylor for an update.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I do have a number of updates for the system and the community. First, while listening to the Durham District School Board Land Acknowledgement today, I'm certainly reminded of the historical and ongoing impact of colonization of Indigenous peoples and their territories. The Durham District School Board Land Acknowledgement aims to bring Indigenous presence and voice to Canadian society and its institutions, which includes schools. Create an opportunity for Indigenous students and staff to begin their day and our events within their cultural context, and create an opportunity for all students and staff to acknowledge the land and waters that they benefit from daily, and to foster mutual respect and reconciliation. As captured in the Durham District School Board Land Acknowledgement procedure, we regularly make the land acknowledgement as a sign of respect, presence, and recognition of Indigenous self-determination. Further to the spirit of reconciliation, we'll be recognizing Orange Shirt Day next Friday, September the 29th. Since 2013, Orange Shirt Day has been recognized as a day for schools and communities to commemorate survivors of residential and Indian Day schools. As of June 20, 2021, September 30th has also been recognized by the federal government as the annual National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. It is important to recognize and understand the lasting impacts and current realities that continue to impact Indigenous students and families. While it's important that we acknowledge this day, the learning and actions to remove systemic barriers must be ongoing and consistent. It is a day to honor survivors, their families, and communities. This week and next, many of our schools are going to be building community spirit through participation in the annual Terry Fox Run. Terry Fox was a Canadian who wanted to make a difference in the world and did so through personal sacrifice and a commitment to raising funds for cancer research. This past July 28th, Terry Fox would have been 65 years old. It is profoundly impactful that the actions he took 40 years ago continue to resonate with Canadians today. On another note, we continue gathering feedback towards the development of the Durham District School Board Multi-Year Strategic Plan. All members of our community are encouraged to participate in the September 20th virtual public consultation evening. This phase of consultations has been ongoing since May, and we've gathered a significant amount of feedback from students, families, staff, and community organizations and individuals to help inform our next steps. For more information about the strategic planning process and to register for the September 20th virtual public consultation, please visit our website at ddsb.ca and click on the MYSP button. Each spring, DDSB staff work carefully to project school enrollment numbers by grade for the upcoming school year. Enrollments then fluctuate in August and early September as students enter and leave the district. In September, enrollment is confirmed through school attendance for over the first 2 to 3 weeks of school, with class or reorganizations taking place in late September. This can result in existing classes having a new teacher assigned or classes being split up in order to accommodate students in order to meet Ministry of Education mandated class size requirements. For the 23-24 school year, the reorganization date is September the 25th. Families whose children are impacted by any reorganizations will be informed of class placement or educator changes in advance of September 25th. Tonight's report, being presented by Associate Director Wright, will touch on more on the enrollment pressures in the Durham District School Board and what we are doing to address it. A new school year brings a call for new parent, family, and guardian volunteers to our school communities. The DDSB Parent Involvement Committee is seeking applications of interest for 2 parent guardian representatives from Ajax, Whitby, Pickering, and the North Schools, Brock, Uxbridge, and Scugog, as well as 1 volunteer from Oshawa. Those interested are encouraged to visit ddsb.ca for more information and to apply by September 22nd. While the Parent Involvement Committee is a great way to get involved at the district level, families are welcome to get involved in their school communities by joining their school community councils. As September 24th approaches, I wish Shana Tova to the Jewish community who will be celebrating the high holiday of Yom Kippur. DDSB calendar includes a detailed list of recognized days of celebration and significance, and is included in each of our board meeting agenda packages. Thank you, and this concludes my update for this evening.
Thank you, Director. We are going to move on now to item number 8, which is public question period. Each question being asked this evening will be displayed on the screen along with its response from staff. Questioners are reminded to ask only their approved question. We have allocated up to 30 minutes for a public question period, and a timer will be visible for all participants. All approved questions, along with their corresponding answers from staff, will be posted on the DDSB website following this meeting. All questions submitted for public question period will be shared with trustees following the meeting. So, first question, I'd like to invite Dylan Reynolds to ask his question virtually.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. All right, my question tonight is about the bell time review. About a year and a half ago, the bell time at all high schools were changed to the 8 a.m. to the 2 p.m. or the 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. bell time due to the ongoing bus driver shortage and the COVID-19 pandemic. But now with the COVID-19 protocols starting to be dropped with the board, I am wondering if the bell time at most secondary schools will migrate back to the regular time, but leaving the 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. school days in place. That's all my questions I have for right now.
Okay, thank you, Dylan. I'll ask Associate Director David Wright to respond to this question.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Dylan. Bell time changes are a tool used to support student transportation, allowing tiered routing and efficient use of busing resources. DDSB's bell time procedure requires changes to bell times in excess of 10 minutes to be approved by the Board of Trustees. So if changes were to be made, they would go through a public process. However, we do not foresee a decrease in the need for tiered busing in the foreseeable future, and likewise anticipate current school bell times will continue to be in effect for the foreseeable future.
I do have a supplemental. Most Pickering schools, I've been hearing a lot of feedback from a lot of our Pickering high schools. Heinrich and Dunbarton were used to be so close to each other, and I think
Dylan, excuse me. We actually don't have supplementals anymore. So if you could please send the question to us and we'll get it answered for you.
Okay.
Much appreciated. I love seeing you again, Dylan.
Yeah, first time.
Oh, didn't happen. Okay. I would now like to invite, I apologize if I mispronounced the name, please correct me, but Igor Cross, who has joined a person to read his question. Just push the button on the mic, in front of you. On the mic, in front of you. Yeah, just push the button, thank you. Just a minute. Yeah.
Am I on? Okay. My name is Igor Kras. I am treasurer at SCC at EBFIN. So parents and guardians at EBFIN students were rather surprised to find out that on August, school will have 8 portables in total for the academic year 23-24. And this is a drastic enrollment increase that cannot be explained by local development that is existing boundaries. And parents already approached the principal at EBFIN with following questions that we are the school holding school for seat and community. As of September, EBFIN has 594 students that are enrolled, and we have 8 portables installed. According to the publicly posted DDSB accommodation plan for 22-26, page 45, projected enrollment comes as follows. For the year 23, it is 472 students and 3 portables. For the year 24, it is 474 students and 3 portables. For the year 25, it's 472 students and 3 portables. And for year 26, it is 455 and 0 portables. This projection is clearly off base, as the current EBFI enrollment already exists multi-year projection by 23%, and it's actually 33% over capacity currently, with 5 extra portables as of September 23. Please provide an answer on what factors caused the DSB such a drastic underestimation of capacity increases, what actions are taken by DDSB to adjust the accommodation plan for 22-26, and what measures are put in place to ensure that such underestimations do not occur in the future.
Thank you. And I will ask Associate Director David Wright to respond to this question.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Welcome, Igor. Through you, Madam Chair. This is a little bit of a roundabout explanation. So the Ministry of Education does not fund construction of new schools based on speculated enrollment. So once residential development plans are registered and residential construction begins, new school projects may be approved. Holding schools are generally used in communities adjacent to growth areas as an interim measure while schools are being built. 3 portables at EBFIN are currently used for in-boundary growth in alignment with the accommodation plan that you referenced. Additional portables on site are supporting students from an area within the Seton development. EBFIN is one of 3 schools that is supporting development from that area of the Seton community. When holding schools reach their maximum capacity, additional holding schools are added. Transportation helps to drive holding school decisions, as it is a very important factor in determining the logistical viability of holding school locations. Any additional questions specific to the EBFIN school community can be addressed to the school administrator. I know that you have, or there have been quite a few questions posed to the school principal and to the school superintendent, and we're working on pulling together comprehensive answers. The accommodation plan 23-27 is coming forward to board this evening. The pupil accommodation plan report includes information available at the time it is drafted, and it is updated every year.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. I would ask Executive Lead Robert Sujanek to read the question submitted by Olga Lishvin.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Why was the DDSB policy and regulation on school boundaries not followed, in particular 1.2 section 3, the preferred alternative adjacent school, and the consultative process sections when the decision was made about changing the existing EBFIN school boundaries and making it a holding school for the Seton community?
Thank you, and I'll ask again for Associate Director Wright to respond to that question, please.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair. The DDSB policy on school boundaries refers to permanent changes to a school's catchment area. Holding school boundaries are not covered under the policy, as they are temporary in nature and are additions to the permanent boundary, in place only until a new school is opened.
Thank you. And on to the next question. I again will ask Executive Lead Robert Sujanek to read the question from Tim Morgan, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. What efforts have been made to inform all students in K-12 about their rights as outlined in the Human Rights, Inclusive Design, and Accommodation Procedure?
Thank you, and I would ask Associate Director Jim Markowski to respond to this question, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Tim. So in response to the questions that you've raised, students and student groups were engaged in the development and the consultation process for the human rights policy and the related procedure on inclusive design and accommodation. Upon policy approval, our first steps were to broadly inform everyone about the policy and procedures, create supporting resources, and build capacity within the system. The policy, procedures, and additional resources are available on the DDSB webpage. We will continue to communicate out and share information and resources in different ways. We will also be working with student groups to raise awareness and develop additional resources to highlight students' rights and responsibilities. We recognize that communicating about the policy and procedures is ongoing work, and we strive to include messages about rights and responsibilities in various communications and interactions with students throughout the year. Thank you.
And thank you, Associate Director Markowski, and that concludes the public question period. So we'll now move on to agenda item 9 as a report from the Committee of the Whole on camera, and I pass it over to Vice Chair Christine Thatcher.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The Committee of the Whole met in closed session on September 18th, 2023, and discussed matter involving the security of the property of the board and the disclosure of intimate, personal, or financial information in respect of a member of the board or committee, an employee or prospective employee of the board, or a pupil, or his or her parent or guardian. Chair Edwards, this is my report. I move that the board approve the actions and adopt any resolutions of the September 18, 2023 Committee of the Whole closed session meeting.
Okay, Trustee Thatcher has moved that. May I have a seconder? May I have a seconder? Trustee Morton. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to item 10, which is good news from the system. And again, I'll pass it on to Director Camille Williams-Taylor.
Thank you, through you, Chair. As always, we do have a prepared presentation, so I will turn it to our media team to press play so that we are able to view the presentation of good news.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of DDSB students and staff, we are happy to bring you good news from across the system.
Students from across the district were excited to get back to school for the first day of the new year. Students met their new teachers, reconnected with old friends, and were introduced to new ones while sharing stories from the summer. Elementary and secondary schools on a modified calendar started school in August, while regular calendar students started their school year earlier this September. Welcome back, students and staff.
The Great Beginnings School Success Program supported the learning and development of more than 515 incoming and current kindergarten students. With the support from early childhood educators, educational assistants, teachers, and child care partners, Great Beginnings implemented a play-based developmentally appropriate program to enhance children's skill sets with a strong emphasis on well-being.
50 years ago, Mike Pantaloresco attended GL Roberts CVI. When Mike attended GL Roberts CVI, he took a path that was more common then and left school for the world of work and did not graduate. After meeting Mike and hearing his story, staff went into overdrive to set him up at Durham Continuing Education to finish his studies to receive his diploma. He graduated this June. Mike believes his graduation shows everybody that when you have a dream, it doesn't matter how long it takes. You can fulfill it. Congratulations, Mike.
The DDSB congratulates Charlie and Nikki from Captain Michael Vandenbos Public School on their triumphant success in the Canadian National Bike Race. Charlie and Nikki represented the Durham region with their talent, speed, and competitive force. Nikki placed first and will move on to represent Canada at the World Championships next year. All of the DDSB will be cheering you on, Nikki. This year, the DDSB will proudly cheer on former student Emma Sharpless, a member of the Canadian Motorcycle Association, at the 2023 International 6 Days of Enduro competition. There's a GoFundMe page set up for Emma where she will cycle 1 kilometer for every $5 raised. Please help us congratulate and cheer on Emma this November.
For the culmination of the Ignite Durham Learning Foundation's Ready to Learn School Supply Drive, IDLF hosted their inaugural backpack stuffing event. Staff, community members, and trustees came together to stuff more than 700 brand new backpacks filled with school supplies for DDSB students. With these supplies, our students will be able to start the new school year motivated, excited, and ready to succeed.
In a heartwarming display of camaraderie and compassion, a group of students led by Elena Abner and her friends Rashana Shaw, Madeline Sentavi, Iman Saad, Ambika Jaikaran, and Ava Downey set up a lemonade stand over the summer to raise funds for fellow students in the DDSB. They not only raised more than $700 for students in support of the Ignite Durham Learning Foundation's School Supply Drive initiative, but are also inspiring others to lend a helping hand to their peers.
For 8 weeks this summer, students experienced fun, learning, and adventure at Durham Forest Summer Day Camp. The camp featured outdoor and experiential learning activities designed to inspire, educate, and reconnect children to the world around them. Daily programs included orienteering, art, outdoor games, learning about local wildlife, as well as free time to discover the nature around them, read a book, or build a shelter.
Families in Ajax, Whitby, and Pickering attended the second annual Back to School Family Fun and Movie event. It was sponsored by the DDSB Parent Engagement Department and coordinated by community partner Durham Family and Cultural Center. Parents, guardians, and fellow students attended the event held at Pickering High School that also provided back-to-school supplies as well as connections with community resources.
More than 50 facilities projects were carried out in schools this summer, including classroom and washroom refresh and renovations, mechanical upgrades for ventilation and boilers, asphalt and window replacements, roof replacement and rehabilitation projects, incoming hydro and water main replacements, and lighting upgrades. Thank you to our amazing facilities services team for your hard work and dedication to keeping our schools safe and up to date.
GL Roberts CVI recently hosted its second annual Taste of the Trades program. 24 students in grades 7 and 8 spent 3 days gaining hands-on experience in the school's shops and culinary labs. Students were introduced to the many pathways they could take to work in trades. Before heading home on the final day, each student received a t-shirt, apron, and bag with tools. Special thanks to the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program and to the DDSB educators Mike Melnichuk, Jillian Broadley, and Mark Patterson, who planned and executed a safe and successful program and gave the students a taste of the trades.
The outdoor education team celebrated the beginning of summer with the start of the DDSB Wilderness Advanced First Aid program at Nonquan Environmental Education Center. Attendees spent 4 days learning from the Compressions for You team on advanced first aid tactics and improving on their outdoor risk management practices.
Eastdale CVI, in partnership with Ignite Durham Learning Foundation, provided free breakfasts for students on June 21st. Students were able to start their exam day with a delicious and nutritious breakfast served by our Eastdale and IDLF staff in order to help Eastdale students get ready to rise and soar to new heights on their final exams. A huge thank you goes out to all for the incredible and generous donations.
A student at Northern Dancer Public School put a lot of thought into how she could make a difference and learned how she could get freezies donated and sell them for $1 each. The result was an outstanding total of $627 that was generously donated to the Denise House. Thank you for your caring heart, your vision, your reason, and your perseverance. Staff and students at Woodcrest Public School won a $5,000 grant from Treestell Cheese. Thank you to Treestell Cheese for making it possible for the school community to purchase their first 3D printers.
This September, we congratulate students on their academic success during the 2022 to 2023 school year. Special congratulations goes out to Dunbarton High School graduate Sarah Weha, Latif, recipient of a Schulich Leader Scholarship in Engineering, and Anderson CVI graduate Danielle Burnett, recipient of the DDSB Chairperson Scholarship. Well done to all students on their past and future achievements.
The dates of significance, as you can see, take us to the end of the next board meeting.
Thank you to Hania and Daniel from RS McLaughlin CVI for reading this month's good news.
Thank you. There was certainly a lot going on over the summer months and the beginning of the year. Our next item is item 11 for DDSB presentations. Our first one is around our summer learning program report, and I will ask Superintendent Aaron Elmhurst. I understand everybody's going to have a little bit to say, but I'll start off with you. Thank you.
Great, thank you and good evening. And through you, Chair Edwards. It gives me great pleasure to share this report on summer learning on behalf of my colleagues this evening. The report can be found on pages 45 to 57 of your board package. The purpose of this report is to provide the Board of Trustees with a summary of all the Durham District School Board 2023 summer learning opportunities for students entering kindergarten through to grade 12. As we continue to work towards providing optional year-round learning opportunities for students, this year we were pleased to offer a range of differentiated and responsive programs to support student well-being, engagement, mental health, and achievement with a focus on the removal of systemic barriers. Summer learning opportunities for students evolve and change on an annual basis based on ministry funding and the interests, strengths, and needs of students. This year, there was an enhanced focus in many programs on consolidating foundational literacy and numeracy skills, small group and individualized instruction, addressing disproportionate access, experience, opportunities, and outcomes, collaborative learning opportunities, inclusive programming, supporting a strong connection to the learning environment, supporting engagement and learning, continuation of mental health supports, extended learning opportunities, and increasing students' confidence and positive attitudes towards learning. All programs that were offered have been shared on the chart on pages 47 to 54, and the team will be happy to answer any questions following this evening's presentation. At this time, I would like to call upon Melissa Shields, who is one of our summer learning leads, and Sarah McDonald, who is also one of our summer learning administrative leads, who are going to introduce themselves and share some information with us this evening.
Mentioned just now, my name is Melissa Shields and I am the principal at Winchester Public School. This year we were so excited to welcome just over 900 students to camp across 14 locations within Durham.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, my name is Sarah McDonald and I am the principal at Durham Continuing Education. I had the pleasure of meeting you last March. Well, I came to speak about the programs that Durham Con Ed offers, and today I stand here representing our summer programs, which run over the 2 sessions, one in July, one in August. In these sessions, we host students from around the province in both in-person and online secondary full credit classes in July. And in July, we also host the DDSB students in our in-person and online credit recovery programs. We would now like to present a brief video that showcases the impact of select summer learning programs that were available this past summer. The video features insights from students, educators, and parents, providing a well-rounded perspective on some of the program's effects.
In the Durham District School Board, we strive to provide year-round learning opportunities. This past summer, we offered a wide range of differentiated and responsive programs for students entering kindergarten through to grade 12.
All programs were designed placing human dignity at the core, supporting student well-being, engagement, and mental health, all in service of student achievement. Today, we will share some highlights and successes of a few DDSB 2023 summer learning programs.
One of the most important benefits, though, is having students feel that they can come into a community of learning, that they feel safe. So offering multiple opportunities for our learners to feel that they are seen and heard within the classroom has been one of our ultimate goals throughout this program.
The benefits so far, again, feeling safe when he's coming here was a big thing, and helping to build his confidence coming to school, leaving home, you know, having that release from mom and dad kind of thing, learning all of his letters and sounds and talking about his family at school, talking about what he does at home, and then bringing it to school in the classroom, and also just building his confidence when he's here.
I am Advance 4 years old. Can't wait to go to school. I'm enjoying sorting by colors, families, numbers, letters, arts and crafts. I had so much fun. I like playing with dinosaurs and water table and with my friends.
I love it here because sometimes I play basketball in the court, and I like playing the court, running and play everything.
Yes, well, while I've been here at Tris, I've learned how to make new friends. My favorite activity on the court is wheelchair basketball.
So I've learned how to make a campfire. I've learned names of a whole bunch of new plants. And like the trees and stuff. I've gone to see the different trees, like just everything about a forest. And it's a forest, there's trails here. You can go through all these paths, which are a lot of fun. Yesterday we did a lot of walking and looking at the trees. We have time to play, which is cool.
The camp is providing a lot of resources for students to allow them to continue growing, and we have ongoing programs, activities for the students to do, and for them to have fun.
My favorite memory from camp this summer is making friends.
My favorite things like the coding session. I like coding because I want to be a software engineer, and that helped me so much.
This camp made me ready for grade 3 because it teaches me language, literacy, math, and art.
I chose to do summer school because I think it's really important to have a credit before even entering high school.
One of the most positive experiences that I've had is knowing that there are more French immersion courses and people who are taking it. French immersion is such a small group, so it was amazing to see different people coming from different schools.
I chose to take summer school to get ahead, as I am also a basketball athlete, so I do a lot of extracurricular activities. So I would love to have extra room during the semester to be able to do those extracurriculars.
We were thrilled to engage over 15,000 students in summer learning this year, and we look forward to continuing to grow and develop programs in response to the ongoing changing needs of our students and families.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. My mouse isn't taking the cursor, my finger isn't working either.
There we go. And we're certainly willing to take any questions from trustees at this time.
All right, trustees, do we have any questions? And as I said, be patient with me with this technology. First up, we have Trustee Carolyn Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I have some comments, and then I do have a question as well. Firstly, I want to say thank you. That's completely amazing. And when we look at the thousands of our students who are participating in those programs, I think that's amazing. So the learning opportunities during the summer are very plentiful. We're very, very proud of that. We're very thankful. The list of the programs Extremely impressive. I was going to ask about the location because we're not talking about location. I'm just curious to know, are we representing Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, the North, Oshawa? I was going to ask about the North, but then I did see Nonquan and I did see S.A. Cocker, so that I do know some programs were in the North. But could you explain to us a little bit about the location and how that's determined?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The credit programs in the North were offered at the home schools of Brock, Uxbridge, and Port Perry. For the credit rescue programs, the opportunity for the students to attend their home schools was given. Those who did not elect to choose that had a plethora of virtual opportunities, both credit rescue and full credits online that were available to them, and they always had the option to come to any in-person classes that we held at Sinclair. But most of our programming for the North was done in the home schools.
When I was looking at the number of getting ready for high school students, seeing over 1,000. Went secondary e-learning courses, 3,300. Those are amazing numbers. And another program that I really like is the Youth in Policing, because I like to see that partnership. We're moving in the right direction. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you to our staff.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, similar question and follow-up question to Trustee Morton's. One, to say that great programs really representing the need of our students, but I think adding on to the question is maybe a deeper dive into the data. So we're talking about 334 students, understanding that Durham is a growing region, so there may be a program in South Oshawa, but are the students from North Oshawa able to access those programs? So I'm wondering, do we have, or is it possible to get a deeper dive into the numbers to see who's actually attending? How many students from Ajax, Pickering, Oshawa, Uxbridge are attending these programs? And maybe using that to inform the location or better advertisement and promotion of some of these programs. I'm also wondering about the age range. So some of these programs may be for someone from 12 to 16, how many 12-year-olds are accessing versus how many 16-year-olds are accessing these programs. So just wondering if that data is available.
I'm going to pass it on to Director Camille Williams-Taylor, sorry.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Certainly a very good question, and it's important that we understand that data when we think about how it is that we plan for next year. While it is that the data is available, I'm not sure that it has been organized in that manner, but it certainly is accessible in that manner because we do various registration exercises. So certainly, Trustee Linton, that's an important question for planning for next year, and we certainly will take that under advisement in order to pull that so that we prepare. You will recall, Trustee, that this report actually comes forward in May because we do let trustees know ahead of time that this is what we're anticipating. So if you remember, you could ask the question again coming into May about how it is that we've used the data coming out of this school year around locations and so forth, and how that has informed where it is that certain programs are going to be located and access to them going into the summer, because you will see this report again.
Trustee Pennell.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I echo all the statements and thanks. It is so fantastic, and I have to say that's probably one of the best prepared videos I've ever seen shown here. Like, it was just chef's kiss. Anyway, I had two questions. The first being, when we're looking at some of the programs, especially more of the cultural appropriate programming, so the Afrocentric programs, I see there's an Indigenous elementary summer program as well. Some of them have, I guess, external partners, and so I don't know who to direct this question to, but the first question is, how do we extend, seek, and sort of the process for finding those external partners? And do we do like an open call at some point in the year, especially looking ahead to next year if there's great demand and we don't have the capacity? Sort of what is the process for doing that? Because I think these are wonderful programs. And then the second question might be a repeat or rephrase of Trustee Linton's, but when I look at the geographics and the demographics of, for example, I'm going to speak on Oshawa because that's what I know. I know that the city of Oshawa doesn't always run like park programs and things in South Oshawa. Unfortunately, it's often a community left behind. And so I'm wondering, knowing that GL Roberts is down there and it's a fantastic space, and perhaps Trustee Morton's question as well, how are we spreading these programs out to make sure that students in spaces that maybe don't receive a lot of programming in general or don't have the funds to access programming can get, I don't know if I want to say priority, but the opportunity to participate in something, one of these programs, because I think it would be wonderful, and I'd like to look at sort of how we address those barriers. So 2 very light questions. Thank you.
We'll start off with Director Camille Williams-Taylor addressing it, and then she'll direct other staff at this point in time.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So again, a very intentional question around how it is that we look at the structure. Admittedly, some of these structures are historic, and so there are continued programs that have emerged or rolled over. In some cases, they are existing relationships that have been extended into these summer options. So some of the partners, because you asked the question about how the partners are determined, some of the partners have been existing relationships. Some of them have grown over time. So for example, Great Beginnings started several years ago. It's through our early years department, and our early years department has worked with a variety of partners over time. Many of these pieces are in fact internal staff. So when we think about some of the structures that we do have in place, like the Reach Ahead, so we heard Principal McDonald talk about continuing ed structures. Those structures are in fact available to students through different sites across the system, and those sites rotate and change over the course of time. This is an existing piece that has been in place for quite a while. So there's some pieces that are historical cycles, and some are intentionally rejuvenated, if you will, or introduced. We have, for example, Focus on Youth is one of the items that is there. That's an employment project. As a summer program, and that's a partnership with the government, with the ministry. And so these, again, are not necessarily sought after by the board, but we were approached. I don't know if Superintendent Elmhurst or any of the many others listed would like to expand on those pieces, but we do see too that we have programs through ISS, we have programs through anti-oppression. So there certainly is a variation. It's certainly not one size fits all. And it's, I do have to say with great pride that we can see through this representation that is truly across the district, north, south, and east to west. But I don't know if Superintendent Elmhurst, if I've left anything out, or if the others on the team would like to comment.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I can speak to one piece of your question related to location. And really, as Principal McDonald also shared, there really are schools that host within all of throughout the jurisdictions across the district. And so when we speak specifically of Oshawa and the needs in South Oshawa, once we have registration completed, and of course in all of our schools, we're really promoting students access those opportunities, then often locations are determined based on where the registrations are coming from. And so if we have a higher number of folks interested in South Oshawa, we will ensure that we've got the space in those schools to host those students. For specific programs such as the Indigenous program, we do provide transportation for students so that no matter where they are in the district, they do have access to those programs as well. So really, even in location choice, it is responsive to student need and the information we receive from the registration process. process.
Okay, any other questions? Trustee Miller?
Thank you, through you, Chair. This was awesome. I really love to see the smiling faces of the students. They looked like they had an awesome time, and it sounded like many of them were prepared and better ready for the school year term. I just wanted to ask about the mental health and special education summer supports. Is there anything that you can share with us in terms of insights? I know I just read about families being able to access some of those supports during the summer. Can you expound a bit on that? Thank you.
First time at the podium. Thank you. So we, after we had ensured the accessibility for our students to all of our locations, we committed with Durham Transportation to ensure that those specific students who needed supports were being safely transported. We came up with plans with home schools and parents and homeroom teachers of students with special education learning needs so that we were ready for them and prepared to address all of their learning needs and throughout the entire camps.
And through you, Chair, we, at the credit programs, had a full running academic resource room with CERTs and EAs. Superintendent Macaulay was instrumental in helping us with the EA hiring this summer and providing that to our students. It was also in person as well as virtual supports through our academic resource room for any of our credit students.
Trustee Linton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm not sure who's going to answer this, but let me make it build. So for these programs, I'm assuming there is a projection of how many students we can accommodate in each and budget aligned to provide the resources to. And again, the numbers are staggering, so I don't think this would be the case for the majority of the programs. But in times or in cases where we're not maxing out the number of students that we're expecting, and there is a gap in terms of budget, so we're not spending the full amount, what happens to that unspent overage? Is it placed in a reserve? Is it moved somewhere else? And I'm just kind of thinking about that and some of the budget challenges we're facing as a board.
I'll ask Superintendent Aaron Elmhurst to start the response to that. Thanks.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I believe we also shared in May some of the budget sources we were accessing to fund the summer learning programs, and some of those are ministry transfer payment agreements that we are using to support. I will tell you that we certainly don't have a challenge filling our summer learning programs. In fact, probably our biggest challenge is making sure that we have space for all the students who are interested. So if by chance we had a surplus, which is certainly not what we found this year, we did find that we really met our targets, if not went above and beyond the targets. We would roll that into the following year where possible. Sometimes TPAs don't allow that, and so we need to ensure we use those funds appropriately, and we haven't had a problem actually using them for the programs. But in spaces where perhaps those are funds that can roll over, we would. But we haven't found that as of yet, as the demand for summer learning programs is quite high. So we typically do use our full budget, if not a little bit beyond. And I don't know if Principal McDonald wanted to add, but I know sometimes in our secondary programs that can tend to look a little bit different.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, we are a school that operates in the summertime, so our funding does come from the ministry like a school would, where the students provide the funding through a type of GSN that we incur. It's an attendance-based funding for us. So we don't exactly have a budget. It's all based on registrations and what we incur from that.
Any other questions from trustees? I have a couple before we go off this topic. Trustee Miller somewhat asked my question around, because some of the reports indicates the number of EAs involved in other programs didn't indicate. I just said staff, so they didn't break them down as much, so I wanted to ensure that it asked if, we're meeting the accessibility and the needs of our students, so that question was answered. The other question I had was around, again, to meet sort of our achievement goals within the math and literacy summer program. In some cases, it's mentioned about exceeding provincial standards, but in other cases, it doesn't mention at all what was met or what was commented. It just said that they improved. So I'm just wondering, as far as that's concerned, how we report whether they've met expectations, because it's not consistent within this particular report. I can see particularly in the literacy 3 to 8, it doesn't mention that.
Thank you. So there were some discrepancies in terms of literacy-based assessments that were utilized. And so you'll see that for grades 1 to 3, the phonological awareness screeners were utilized. Grades 3 to 8 in English was DIBELS. And something we had encountered with our kind of first run with that was that it really would have, we needed more time in order to make those gains while using the DIBELS assessments. So it was a learning opportunity for us in terms of going into next year with really securing those assessment pieces that are going to give us that really great data that we can support with moving forward with planning.
Thank you. And just one other question, and it's around, I know that the Great Beginnings Start Success, those programs that, transition into kindergarten to grade 1, that's where we tend to look at possible referrals for assessments, and then later on you talk about assessments, and it's a critical opportunity to sort of clear up some of our clinical assessments. I'm just wondering if we've increased the number of referrals and where we are in those assessments.
So thank you, and through you, Chair. So as our summer learning programs tier out of one school year and really flow and inform into another school year, for the most part, our ISS staff do close off or pause the referrals over the summer. Again, as indicated in the report, we follow the lead from the students. So when we're under the category of mental health, quite often what we hear from students and families is that desire to take a pause during the summer months. For example, adolescents engaged in summer employment that is hourly based, as well as the social dynamic of school and how that impacts on the need for those services. The majority of our staff do focus their time during the school year. The 26 assessments that were done during the summer were in consultation with families. So for a number of these students, when offered the opportunity to either do it during the school year or the summer, the student, along with their family, requested a summertime assessment so that they weren't missing out on learning during the regular school year. Part of our assessment pathway, whether it's done in the school year or in the summer, is a sharing back where consent is given from family and student back with the school team so it can inform accommodations going forward for students. In terms of the referrals for community services, we do have a fairly low engagement in mental health services over the summer, and so those numbers do dip and is not something that we specifically track in terms of the button, but certainly take that under consideration for future data.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you so much for the incredible report that you've done and the incredible work that you've done over the summer. There was a multitude of programs and offerings, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to item 12, recommended actions. We have the report and adoption of resolutions for the Standing Committee. Vice Chair Christine Thatcher.
Thank you, and through you, I move that the board now receive the minutes of the September 5th, 2023 Standing Committee meeting and adopt any resolutions from September 5th, 2023 Committee of the Whole closed session meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Thatcher. May I have a seconder? Trustee Morton. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. On to item 12B. It's the short-term borrowing resolution, and I'm going to ask Associate Director David Wright to explain this to us.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This report is coming for you this evening for two reasons. One, to provide a little bit of background on short-term borrowing, and two, to ask for your consideration in passing the resolution included on page 64. In the course of operations, the board is required from time to time to borrow funds to mitigate cash flow pressures. Short-term borrowing is allowed under the Education Act to support both capital and operating needs. DDSB generally uses short-term borrowing to finance the cost of purchasing land and to float major capital projects. Education development charges are the mechanism intended to cover the cost of purchasing property, but EDC's, education development charges, come in over time and so don't necessarily align with the timing of the purchase of land. Also, as highlighted in the analysis section of the report, the level of education development charge has been artificially muted through legislation, and so the current rates are not reflective of the actual cost of land. Similarly, the ministry flows capital progress payments twice a year, which doesn't align with our payment schedule to contractors. There are times when a school board's cash flow from the Ministry of Education may be delayed, though not something we've really seen at DDSB. Having access to short-term borrowing would help us to get through if we find ourselves in that situation. As stated in the report, the board did access $65 million out of the short-term funding within the last calendar year. The bank has agreed to provide access to up to $175 million, an amount that has not been revisited for this year. It is the same as last year. In addition to making progress through a number of capital projects this year, we will also be purchasing additional properties, and though we will continue to collect EDC revenue, the cost of procuring land will far exceed what we will be collecting, strongly forecasting that we will be accessing these funds to a greater extent this year. The resolution is included in your package on page 64, as I mentioned, and I'm happy to answer any questions through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Associate Director Wright. Do we have any questions to begin with? Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm just curious to know if the province realizes how their decision on EDC charges have affected all our board as well as many others. And if so, if not, perhaps we can act on that again. I know we've written them in the past, but I'm asking you, do we need to do more?
Associate Director Wright.
Through you, Madam Chair, it would just be conjecture on my part. Trustee Morton, certainly we have all done what we could to bring up the EDC deficit issue with elected provincial politicians at every opportunity. I do believe that the minister is aware of the situation. I'm not sure that they truly appreciate the magnitude of the situation we're in. Anecdotally, I did have a conversation with staff when we were preparing this report. It is likely that we will breach the $175 million threshold over the next couple of years as we continue to purchase properties to support capital builds and enrollment growth in the Durham region. Envision Durham, of course, anticipates Durham region to just about double in population over the next number of years. So the message from the Ministry of Education at this point is, when you run out of your ability to borrow money, come and talk to us. Not really an appropriate message in terms of managing the long-term implication of borrowing this much money, but we are at the hands of the province at this point with the EDC regulation. So I'll just highlight to trustees, we do have some sessions coming up to help you all understand education development charges a little bit better, as this is a year, or the next calendar year, this school year is a year in which you'll be required to pass an EDC bylaw. So we will provide all the background and EDC study information for you to make that decision. Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just want to start by saying thank you for the report. I don't know if my question is so much a question for you to answer, but something to emphasize that you said that I think is very important. In terms of, my question was going to be, what happens if we reach the maximum, if we use the maximum that we're allowed to borrow of these funds to do all the things that we have to do to keep people in schools? And your response was, then the ministry is saying, come talk to us at that point. And I guess just for the record, I'd like to state that that is an incredible shame on our province, that we're at the point where not only do we have to borrow funds to build and operate schools so that people have an opportunity at education, but also that there isn't a contingency plan for when we are squeezed to the point that we can't we can't borrow anymore, we can't build any more schools, we can't accommodate the incredible growth that our region is seeing, that we're not alone in this across the province. And so I just, if you have anything else to add to the question of, that I would have posed in terms of what else, what do we do when and if we max this out and additional funds are not promised, I welcome it, but otherwise just shame on this province for allowing it to get this bad, because this is really hard to stomach when we have schools in overflow and people who are in classes that are overfilled, and there's not much that we as staff and as trustees can do to quell their fears and concerns.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. A couple of things. The ministry may very well have a plan. They just haven't told us what it is, but so far they certainly have not told us what it is. $175 million is what we've currently negotiated with our lender. Certainly we can have conversations with our lender about borrowing in excess of $175 million. Our operating budget is closing on $1 billion, and capital and operating together is well in excess of $1 billion. So certainly we are a going concern as an organization and should have the ability to leverage additional funds if required. Our EDC deficit is forecast to be several $100 million within the next 25 years or so. So this is certainly something that needs to be addressed.
Trustee Linton, I saw your finger hovering over the button.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair, there may be documents that outline this somewhere, but I guess part of my concern or question would be kind of short, medium, long term. So there are crises now that we're trying to manage: transportation crisis, school utilization in terms of our space crisis. So I understand that this funding is for future state and to try and avoid some of this happening down the road. I'm wondering, is there any plans to utilize those funds to address any of the challenges that we're seeing? So is there a way of advancing or expediting certain projects that are underway with these funds? Like, what is the actual utilizations of these funds? Is there a deep breakdown of how the funds are going to be utilized, like almost line by line item?
Associate Director Wright.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair. So this is for cash flow mitigation purposes. So this isn't to borrow against, to pay back in future years for current operating needs, because that's just not the way we're funded. We're not able to borrow like that. So this is really, if we need to purchase land, we'll leverage this, we'll get the money back over time. If we're building a school and we need to pay contractors and don't have the cash, the ministry funds us twice a year for the updated capital payments, and so we leverage this on a short-term basis. This isn't something we can borrow from on a long-term basis. So appreciate what you're suggesting. Unfortunately, that's a little bit outside what we're able to borrow for. Does that answer your question? Yeah?
Any other questions? Any other questions? And just a note as to this EDC charges are in the utmost mind of many boards across the province. And as far as further restrictions have been placed on what we can spend our EDCs on as well. And there are boards currently that do not have any EDCs in their pocket, and they actually have to go to the ministry and request those funds every time. And it still concerns me when we're looking at the new the speeding up of the capital projects process, when one of the considerations is do you already have land purchased? Well, we happen to have a bit of land here that we have purchased for sites, and we have the ability to do that. But there are other boards that do not have that ability. And so then what does that mean? Even though they have an urgent need, they cannot get it because they're not considered ready to purchase a school. There is a huge issue around the whole capital projects process. Still, even though there's some improvements around wait times, there is huge problem around EDCs and the ability for school boards to move forward in projects, especially growing boards like Durham. So if I don't see any other questions, yes, Trustee Miller. Oops.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm just wondering the implications of when if we do receive this, the loan or this, we have resolved this borrowing resolution. I'm just wondering about what are the implications for receiving funds, like in terms of the ministry going forward. Like, what are the stipulations? Like some of the things that Donna had, sorry, our chair had already mentioned. Just concerned in terms of what restrictions or what would we have to report back to the ministry?
Associate Director Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Trustee Miller, I hope I got your question correctly. So we do report to the ministry our use of short-term borrowing funds and for what purpose. Again, we primarily, so there are times when the Ministry of Education withholds operating funds, and if a school board doesn't have cash, they can leverage short-term borrowing to make their payroll, et cetera. We're not in that situation. We've never been in that situation because we're on top of our ministry reporting. They don't withhold any grant payments. So we use these primarily for capital purposes. So when we are building a school, for example, we borrow from the bank to pay our contractors, and then twice a year the Ministry of Education receives a report from us on progress payments, and they fund. And they also fund the interest on the short-term borrowing for capital construction. Does that help from a, yep, perfect.
Trustee Piniella.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I'm so sorry, it's me again. I'm trying to wrap my head around how we as a public institution are partially funding public expenditures through private lending and then being reimbursed publicly for it. But anyway, 5.0 of the report just says financial implications. And so I'm building a little bit off of Trustee Miller's question. I'm trying to understand how when, so for example, the Ministry of Education reimburses boards for interest charges related to capital expenditures to a maximum of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Interest charges on funds used to cover an EDC deficit are chargeable to the EDC fund. My question here is, wouldn't it just make sense for them to pay up front what the cost is instead of us paying for it out of the EDC fund, potentially incurring interest, and having them reimburse the original cost and then any potential interest? Like, am I misunderstanding the process? Do you need me to rephrase?
Let me take a crack at it.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair. Some boards do have that process. Some boards will request funding for land when they request money to build a school. we are an EDC eligible board. You can be an EDC eligible board one of two ways. You can have greater than 100% utilization at all your schools, or you can have an EDC deficit. So trustees of DDSB, because we're an EDC eligible board, will pass an EDC bylaw, and that is confirming the amount that is charged for each new residential construction or commercial construction if trustees pass a commercial or non-residential EDC amount. It's a different way of getting the money in a quickly developing area. I think that you would see most smaller boards, rural boards, northern boards are not EDC eligible boards because they don't meet either of the criteria. They don't build a lot of schools. They don't see a lot of residential growth. So when they require a school, they request the money from the ministry. The ministry gives them the money to purchase the land, gives them the money to build the school, though they still need to borrow from the bank for the short-term costs of construction. The constructing piece, if it helps, for clarification, is part of the ministry's cash management strategy. The Ministry of Education doesn't want to use their own cash. They want school boards to use their own cash. So they don't flow grant payments to school boards if school boards have their own money in the bank, and school boards can generate their own money in a lot of different ways, from interest, etc. So if school boards have money to pay, then the ministry withholds the payments until they don't have that cash, and then they flow the money. And so the ministry is holding their cash, not that they have cash, it's borrowing, so they're reducing their interest liability by having boards use their own cash. So there's a rationale from a provincial perspective. From a board perspective, it's not that fantastic, because if we do have cash money, we can invest, we can use that interest for the betterment of students and the benefit of the organization, but that is becoming less and less the case.
Okay, Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. I'm looking at the recommendation on page 63, and I would like to put forward the motion that the Board of Trustees approve the borrowing resolution for the 2023-2024 school year.
Okay, I have that motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? Trustee Arsenault. A discussion about the motion on the floor. Trustee Linton.
I'd actually gone to put up my hand before.
I know, but the motion was put in. It's okay.
I guess I understand the motion put forward, but I'm trying to understand and appreciate, through you, Chair, I appreciate your Associate Director using plain language all the way through. I feel I'm trying to understand in more plain language. We do this, we see this. So I'm not sure if you were able to answer that while this motion's on the floor, or...
If it clarifies as far as helping you, as far as the voting is concerned, yes, Associate Director can answer your question. Thank you.
I think I understand your question, Trustee Linton. Please correct me if I'm not hitting the mark. We require trustees to pass this resolution so we can take it to the bank to say the Board of Trustees has authorized us to borrow on behalf of the organization. So without this resolution, we don't have the authority to borrow from the bank. Okay.
And for you, Chair, can just, again, continue with the plain language. Go to the bank, give them this letter, they say, yes, here you go, here's your 175 million. You now go to blank and do blank with it for future state. That's what I'm trying to understand.
So when we need to purchase a piece of property, so the call for capital priorities is due on October 20th. In order to be in the strongest position we can, we want shovel-ready business cases for the Ministry of Education. And so where we have an opportunity to purchase a piece of property in an area where we'd like to build a school, we're going to purchase that property using future EDC revenue borrowed from the bank under this resolution, so that we can say to the ministry, we're ready to build this school, we have the piece of property, we have the design in hand, please approve the capital funding to do that. Once we receive the approval from the ministry, we're going to tender and hire a contractor, and the contractor is going to invoice us at a pace different than the ministry is going to fund us the progress payments. So the ministry funds the progress payments twice a year. The invoices are going to come from the contractor on a monthly basis. So we're going to catch up from a revenue perspective twice a year. So does that help clarify? Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. So I have a motion on the floor as far as that the Board of Trustees approve the borrowing resolution for the 2023-24 school year. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12C, the Violence in School Ad Hoc Committee Terms of Reference. I will pass it on to Trustee Oldfield as chair of the committee.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. On September 11th, the Violence in Schools Ad Hoc Committee had its first meeting, and at that meeting, the committee directed the chair of the committee and the director to develop a more comprehensive terms of reference. I want to thank Director Williams-Taylor for the quick turnaround in drafting the proposed terms of reference that you have here before you. They were provided under separate cover, but they are now appearing at page 167 and are provided to you. And I move that the terms of reference for the Violence in Schools Ad Hoc Committee established by resolution of the board dated May 15th, 2023, be amended by replacing the existing terms of reference in their entirety with the terms of reference found at page 167 of the agenda package.
Thank you. I have a mover. May I have a seconder? Trustee Pinello. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, can I, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much, Trustee Oldfield. Moving on to item 12D, which is the appointment of the voting delegate for OPSPA Board of Directors. As our two voting representatives are able to attend the upcoming Board of Directors meeting on the 21st and 22nd of September, the Board of Trustees needed to temporarily appoint a voting member for OPSPA that will be in attendance. I need a motion to appoint the alternate director as the DDSB voting member, and unfortunately, I need somebody else to do it because I am the one that is attending. Thank you. So. If I could have a motion to do this so. Trustee Oldfield. Sure.
I didn't turn on my mic, but I'll do it. So I move that that Donna, or Chair Edwards, attends the OPSPA meeting on Trustee Cunningham and my behalf.
It's actually to appoint me as the voting delegate.
And as the voting delegate.
Okay, thank you. First, a seconder. Trustee Miller. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to information items, we're going to start with the quarterly construction and major project with Associate Director David.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, it is my pleasure to welcome and introduce Lisa Bianca, Head of Facility Services, who is joining us this evening to present this report.
Okay, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased this evening to share with you an update on construction and development activities since our last report, which took place in June. The summer break, when staff and students are not in school, is a very busy time for major renovation and improvement projects. Over this past summer, roof replacements at 4 schools were completed, as well as 5 exterior cladding projects, 5 window replacements as well. Many interior refreshes and upgrades to meet curriculum requirements were completed to provide improved teaching and learning spaces to the return of class in September. Ventilation remains a strong focus, with 7 projects completed or continuing, which will provide upgraded and improved mechanical ventilation to schools with older or lacking systems. We continue to develop additional ventilation projects into the current year and beyond, both as standalone projects and as key components in other renovations. As we embark on our 2023-2024 renovation improvement project schedule, market increases continue to be challenging, but our staff will continue to develop projects that utilize our funding to achieve the greatest impact and further the DDSB strategic goals and key priorities. Facility Services continues to make good progress with the construction of our capital priorities projects. Construction of the Beaver River Public School project and unnamed North Oshawa PS made good progress throughout the summer and are proceeding on schedule for a 2024 opening. Work also started on the Mary Street Community School site for the replacement addition and site works. Work is underway at both Vaughan Willard Public School for the 2-room childcare expansion and accompanying 2-room classroom addition, and at Scott Central Public School for the 3-room childcare addition. It's been a very busy summer for both our construction and major projects teams. Unnamed Pickering Creekwood Public School is tender ready, pending completion of the site purchase. The site owner, City of Pickering, continue to work with the Ministry of the Environment for a record of site condition, which is necessary for the property to change ownership. ATP, which is approval to proceed, has been submitted to the Ministry of Education, but is held pending resolution of the site purchase. Due to delays in site acquisition from the City of Pickering, project completion will need to be rescheduled from 2024. Unnamed North Oshawa Secondary School and the unnamed Pickering Seton Public School are well along in design development and municipal approvals process and are on track for their scheduled openings. When designing these and other new schools, the design of the previous schools are used, or we call them a rebuild, with improvements and modernizations incorporated to respond to changes in learning strategies, pedagogy, policies, and procedures. For example, over the last several builds, libraries have been replaced with learning commons. One-to-one device availability has made computer labs redundant, and these spaces have been transformed into classrooms and other learning spaces. The design of washrooms and change rooms have also evolved. These changes strive to provide the most private and safe spaces for all students when needing to use these facilities, and privacy and safety is the foundation that forms the basis for all design decisions made in the development of a modernized design. Please allow me to show you what these spaces will look like and then speak to the design process. I'll turn it over to there we go. So as you can see, we're walking down the hall, and this would be the approach to the revised washrooms. All right, so now we're showing you a floor plan of the space that we just sort of walked through with our animation. And as you saw in the video, the individual washrooms are surrounded by floor-to-ceiling walls, completely self-enclosed, and similar to the single washrooms located throughout the building. When looking at the details of these spaces, we considered privacy. There are no gaps at the top or bottom of walls or doors. Each space is completely enclosed. We considered door swing, including the line of sight into the washroom from the corridor when the door was opening. And we considered safety. The doors swing in so that there's no ability to block the door and prevent somebody from exiting. When not locked, the doors remain partially open, and in each stall is an emergency call button, similar to other single-use washrooms in the building. Individual needs of users were also taken into account, which led to providing a mirror in each room, as well as dispensers for menstrual products. The 2 larger rooms at the end of the alcove are spacious enough for people using wheelchairs or other mobility aids, and they also contain a sink within the room. a large, we call it a trough sink. It's a single sink that's very long. Large trough sink, bottle fillers, and hand dryers are located directly off the corridor, permitting a quick hand wash without having to go into a washroom, and being located in a highly visible area are less susceptible to vandalism, which is something that we have had a challenge with over the last few years. The arrangement of the washrooms in an alcove off the corridor encourages both passive and active supervision, which addresses student concerns about wanting to feel safe when using washrooms. It's also beneficial when families are attending the school for events. This design allows parents to supervise their child without being in the student washroom or in the stall themselves. In elementary schools, these washroom groups are located on each floor of the new schools, either in one large group, as in the North Oshawa Public School, or in two groups, as in the Creekwood design. We continue to have other single-use washrooms throughout the building, a minimum of 2 located off the main corridor on each floor, and 1 in each purpose-built kindergarten room, and 1 for purpose-built special education classrooms. So I hope that sort of overview of sort of our design process and the walkthrough has given you an idea of what these spaces will look like. So thank you.
Questions from trustees. Trustee Oldfield.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. My question is around the locks, I guess, of those stalls. So they're floor to ceiling. There's an emergency button on the inside. If that's the case, and there was an issue, is there a way for, and the door's locked on the inside, is there a way for staff to be able to unlock it from the outside in an emergency easily, like quickly, not like get out a screwdriver type of thing and take the lock off, but like something quick?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, they can readily access it, the administrator and the school custodian as well. We would have something in place so that a student could be released quickly.
Student trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment and thank the facility services team for making sure that our schools are getting built, and also that I've never seen the washroom design before, and I do quite like it. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Linton.
Thank you. That was very helpful. There were many conversations over the summer with parents who had concerns around the look and the composition of these washrooms, and I think that answers many of these questions. But I'm wondering if that rendering, the video, and this will be on our website and easy accessible, so we can point parents to it for them to see if there are future questions.
Associate Director Wright.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, appreciate the interest that parents have of this. Certainly we'll take that away, Trustee Litton. I wouldn't say we generally have portions of school designs on websites, but it's certainly something we can consider. So we'll look for an appropriate location to share that information. Thanks.
Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Firstly, Lisa, I want to say thank you for an amazing report. Secondly, I want to say I like the term learning commons. That's very appropriate. My question involves the child care facilities. I'm wondering how many of our schools have child care, and are they found in all 7 of our municipalities?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. We do have childcare facilities throughout the board. In my next report, when we bring the accommodation plan, each of the municipal sections goes into detail about what childcare we do have. As a rule, with our capital priorities submission, new schools going forward, we always seek out a partnership with our local community CMSM, our childcare oversight group, and we try and include childcare facilities in every new build going forward. Right now, before the new ones open, we have 38 purpose-built childcares, and then we have before and after programs in close to every school in the district. There's a few that are still to come along, but we're pretty close. Thank you. Okay.
I have Trustee Arsenault.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm looking at this design, and this design is exactly what you have. This is the template of what you're putting in the school. Is this correct?
That is correct.
If I'm looking at this, I'm looking at 4 bathrooms accessible for, let's say, one set of students. Is it a total, like, is it 8 of them? Like, you can go into any of the 8 washrooms there?
Yes, that would be the case. And there may be, depending on the size of the school, there may be more than one sort of bank of these washrooms throughout the building. So it isn't sort of, 8 or 10 facilities for the entire school. But the idea is that, yes, you can access any of those rooms.
The other thing that I'm looking at is that in our schools, there's so many children. Even if you put in 10 washrooms for them to use, I feel like there's going to be lines, kids waiting to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
This is how many, currently right now in a bathroom for our schools, the girls' bathroom, the boys' bathroom, how many stalls is there?
The idea, this is indicative or illustrative of one bank. There would be the same number of fixtures that we conventionally provide right now. So we're not decreasing the number of toilets that would be provided in the building. We're just arranging them differently. So it might be a little misleading. This happens to be an illustration of a bank of 10, but we do have larger groupings. We also have smaller groupings. It depends on the actual school design. For instance, North Oshawa has a larger group, and Pickering Creekwood has a group similar to this, but also has a secondary one on the same floor. So ultimately, the goal is to provide the same number of toilets that we are currently providing in existing buildings. We're just arranging them differently.
Okay, yes, Trustee Arsenault.
Just a short question, but as far as cost goes, building this new style of bathroom versus the bathrooms that we have right now with everything new, what is the difference? Like, is this going to cost more?
Through you, Madam Chair, in a new build, the way we arrange the fixtures, the cost difference is negligible, whether we arrange them in the way we have been building them or in this new arrangement. I will say, so the cost is negligible. We priced it separately when we did go out for tender, and there were no significant additional costs. I will say, though, that when we do go to renovate existing schools, we have to be cognizant of cost because they're rearranging the existing plumbing once it's in can add additional cost. So in a new build, I would say no, there is no additional cost.
Okay, I'm going to pass on to Trustee Linton, and I'll come back to you. So Trustee Linton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just kind of recognizing that some of these designs predate us, just wondering, was there a consultation process with parents in terms of this design and for future state for newer schools coming in? Will there be an opportunity for consultation and feedback from parents?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The consultation process took place with both our affinity groups and other groups within the board. representing students, teachers, and by extension, many are parents as well. We also, when we do build a new school, after a school is opened, it's been open for a year, we do a survey and we seek feedback from the users of that new build, and we take that back and use that to inform refinements in the design. So we seek sort of input from sort of across the system, as well as a board, in order to be sort of efficient with our money and to also speed up the process. We do what's called a modified repeat or a rebuild. So we very rarely, virtually never, sort of start from scratch on a school design. We take what's proven, we take what's happened, and then we adjust and modernize and improve going forward. So we very rarely, if ever, have an opportunity for a ground-up new design.
And just to note, one of the capital improvement processes is to have the ministry has a bank of designs that are sort of, if you wish, pre-approved. And I'll be happy to say that we have several DDSB school build designs that are part of that approval process. So really pleased to see that as far as that's concerned. I'm going to can I go to Trustee Miller? She hasn't spoken yet, and I'll come back to you, Trustee Arsenault. So Trustee Miller.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just a quick clarification for the design of the doors. I just wanted to understand the length. Previously, I think I heard that it was to the floor. Is there any ventilation at the top of the door?
Sorry. There isn't ventilation through the door, and the mechanical system is designed so that each one of those rooms has its own mechanical ventilation, almost like your sort of your bathroom fan, in your washroom at home. So there is no need to ventilate through the door. We thought it was really important to keep the tolerances as tight as possible. We apply what we call the cell phone test, so there's no gap large enough to be able to slip a cell phone under the door, over the door, through the cracks. We felt that was very important to preserve privacy and safety within the area.
Thank you, Trustee Arsenault.
Thank you, and through your chair. I know they're putting in these new bathrooms in the new schools. But putting in the new bathrooms and then doing a survey, and suppose parents, and suppose this doesn't work and we have to make changes to that, isn't that, that's not very helpful, loss of better words to say, to have to fix something after we built it. And same thing, are we going to do the survey after we've done all of the bathrooms in the school? Or why can't we leave existing bathrooms alone and work on just the new ones?
So like I said, the survey encompasses the entire building, and we certainly do take it back and can make considerations from it. Would we ever change the design? I would say that is, somewhat unlikely. We believe that this design sort of meets the needs of the school population and the students. Within the existing buildings, incorporating designs that take up greater floor area is challenging. So in many cases, we're not able to do that. Where we can, we will, but again, cost is a factor, as is space.
Trustee Brown.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I think a lot of these questions are coming because we get a lot of emails from parents who have concerns. Some of them are cultural, religious, etc., and we're hoping today to at least be able to give some of those parents some answers. I don't have the answer. I know that there are surveys that are done, and from a personal perspective, I mean, it's the students, they're the ones, that's the voice that I want to hear. And I'm not sure whether or not that was heard or even, I don't know, but again, like Stephen said, it predates me. So I'm not sure where the information is coming from, but I will just say that, listen to our students, it's their bathroom.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, if I might, in order to add a little bit of context to where we received some of the information and did incorporate some student voice, if I could ask Superintendent Macaulay to speak, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I agree that the importance of student voice influencing on their spaces and how they move through them is really important. So another layer that we took a look at as a team is the data directly from our students in terms of the positive school climate information that looks at mental health and well-being and how students move through their schools. And from that information over time, we know that there is a fairly consistent indication that one of the two spaces that students report feeling unsafe most frequently is in washroom design. So when we take a look at our current footprint, and as Lisa shared, those different access points for technology, supervision, the new design actually increases privacy, increases safety because of the private spaces being more private, as well as allowing for greater peer-to-peer supervision and staff-to-student supervision with it being opened onto the hallways. And then we layer on all of the aspects of students coming with siblings to school events and that safety, where a parent or caregiver can supervise use rather than sending in with another student and siblings that way. But we really did take a look at information direct from our students and families. The positive school climate data is one of those points that influenced on the design.
Thank you. And I'm going to, okay, well, one more question or comment, Student Trustee Van Cameron, and then we need to move on to the pupil accommodations, because I'm sure there's many, many questions for that as well.
Thank you, Chair. And I would just like to say that I certainly think that these bathroom designs are a step in the right direction towards making our bathrooms feel safer for our students. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to, I know. Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you. Just have a quick question about the first design that we build. Is this in the new Oshawa School?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, North Oshawa Public School will be the
2024?
first. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the pupil accommodations plan, and again, I'm assuming it's Lisa Bianca that is going to be speaking on that, so go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to be here this evening to share the pupil accommodation plan, trends, issues, and future opportunities for 2023-2027. This report is updated each year and is a culmination of information gathering and analysis over the previous 12 months. This document is the architecture for decision making, including where to seek new capital priority schools, where boundary reviews need to be considered, how we can support schools with declining enrollment so they continue to be able to offer the same learning opportunities to students, and how we can accommodate new students as our area grows. Through the growth analysis across the district, it seeks out to identify changes in demographics, discovers enrollment trends, looks to see how these will impact school utilization, and ultimately our students, staff, and families. This report's been restructured from previous years, and it's been divided into two parts with the goal of providing not only overall development trends and issues, but also drilling down to the issues impacting each municipality and making it easier to find the information related to your specific communities. When read together, This is an all-encompassing document providing insight into the impact of the last 5 years and what we can expect for the next 5. Enrollment projections, or OEPs, have been provided for the report years 2023 to 2027. These projections are updated each spring with data derived from a variety of sources, including pre-registrations, grade-to-grade progression, and yield from new developments. What is difficult to capture is growth from regenerating neighborhoods, which is relatively new to the Durham region. During the year, there may also be changes in the timing of new builds that require a change to or designation of additional holding schools. These changes, occurring over the past 12 months, are reflected in the current pupil accommodation plan and may result in an increase in the number of portables a school will need in the future. In addition, we have seen a doubling of the number of international students, with now 450 registered and attending our schools. Overall, the OEP for 2023 are on target with our September registrations. So as we know, we're experiencing already, the Durham region is undergoing intense growth. For the first time in many years, we're seeing significant growth in established, mature neighborhoods. And in many areas, infill development are building houses within established school boundaries on land that's been vacant for decades. In addition to this, significant new developments taking place across the northern portions of our urban communities, bringing students into existing schools while we complete construction or wait for the approval to build new schools in neighborhoods closer to home. Holding schools are challenging. Over the past few years, many of these schools were in declining enrollment positions with vacant classrooms. But providing space for students in new development not only uses available space effectively, but when nearby schools have vacant space, we're unlikely to get approval to build more classrooms. Capital priorities are only approved when both the new school being proposed and the nearby schools will have enrollments of 100% into the future. The selection of holding schools is not only dependent on available space, though. It's very dependent on our ability to provide transportation from the home neighborhood to the school and fit this route within the busing models. Holding boundaries are temporary in nature and are removed when the holding school is at capacity for portables or a new school opens with its own boundary. Please remember, too, that these are all our students. Whether they're walking from a nearby home or arriving on the bus, these students will become classmates and friends during their years together. Currently, West Whitby, North Oshawa, and Pickering-Seton are all undergoing swift and accelerated growth. With 10, 8, and 6 holding schools respectively, with 10, 8, and 6 holding schools respectively. We have 1 school under construction in North Oshawa and 2 allocated and under development in Pickering. Although we have applied for funding for a West Whitby school twice since 2021, the ministry has not granted approval, and new schools in West Whitby remain our top priority. Throughout the year, we receive many questions around enrollments and capacity. And I'd like to direct your attention on pages 11 and 12. We provided information on how these numbers are established and the guiding principles and why, when a school is listed as being in excess of 100% utilization, it remains a safe and effective learning environment for students. We have 3 capital priority projects under construction. We have 1 imminent and 2 capital projects working their way through municipal and ministry approval processes. Our next capital priorities request is due to the ministry in late October, and we need several new schools to accommodate the growth we are seeing. You'll notice that both high and low utilization schools have been identified in this report. Many high utilization schools are holding schools for growth areas and will see relief when the new schools are opened. However, as discussed earlier, several are the result of growth within their existing boundaries that's going to create longer-term accommodation pressure. On page 4, staff have identified 3 boundary reviews to ease the effect of continued long-term growth, which is not the result of holding, and in 1 case, to establish a boundary for a new school under construction. Boundary reviews are a public process, providing information, proposed solutions, seeking input from communities and stakeholders before a decision is brought to and made by the board. So in conclusion, the accommodation plan provides information on enrollment, school utilization, long-term trends and options that are available to accommodate change across the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We are open for questions, and I'm starting with Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. I want to go back to the West Whitby area. It's an area that we have been carefully monitoring now for several years, and there are many, many accommodations that we've made to take care of our kids the best we can in our schools. It's important to note that the accommodation pressures currently in West Whitby are of great concern to many of our families, many of the West Whitby families, as well as a number of our local councillors who receive regular emails and phone calls from our concerned families. I understand that we have submitted requests that you did mention for West Whitby schools, elementary schools, on 2 separate occasions, and these were denied on both occasions. And I also am pleased that West Whitby will be our top priority in this next capital priority submission, just coming up here in October. So with regards to the situation in West Whitby, I would like to submit a motion for consideration as follows. I move that the board request that the chair and director, as secretary of the board, compose a letter to be sent to the Minister of Education and copying the usual recipients to alleviate the accommodation pressures in West Whitby. Thank you.
We have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Trustee, I know, double Trustee Arsenault and Trustee Brown. Okay, a discussion on the motion to write a letter to the chair and the director, compose a letter to address the accommodation pressures in West Whitby. Any discussion? Trustee Linton.
I'm wondering, because as we look at this report, there are many schools that seem to be in a very similar position. Would you be willing to extend that to include some of the other schools that face similar pressures in other municipalities?
As this is talking specifically about West Whitby, and I would say that I would ask that the Whitby trustees might want to comment on that, but also the fact that there's no barrier for other trustees to actually write another letter, and have us write another letter for those particular ones as well. But again, I would first like to have a sort of a comment from the West Whitby at this point in time for their reasoning, their rationale around their letter. Okay, Trustee Thatcher.
We did mention, I was under the impression that 2 main areas of growth in the board was West Whitby and North Oshawa. Even if we speak to the North Pickering Seaton area as well, there are 2 schools that are currently in the future for Pickering. There are also an elementary and secondary school that is in the near future for North Oshawa. So not that I wouldn't necessarily suggest a different letter addressing some of the issues there. The reason that I specifically focused on West Whitby was due to the fact that we have put several submissions forward which have been denied. We have tremendous pressure. It's a grave situation. Our families are very concerned. I hear it on a daily basis, and we do not have at this time any schools in the offing or plan for that area. So that was just my reasoning. No offense to any other area.
Okay, because the motion right now just says West address Whitby, so the motion would have to be amended, and so that's what I was just asking for. And again, Trustee Litton, I don't know whether you want to suggest a motion to address accommodations in Pickering, basically Pickering, North Oshawa, and be included in that motion. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead on to Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, not really a question, but maybe just a piece for consideration for the Whitby trustees to include, to reach out to some of the families who have been connecting with you about the pressures and the issues, and ask if you can take like anonymous excerpts or statements from them and include that in the letter, because I think sometimes it's very easy for the government to just see numbers and not actually see the experiences. And if it's anything like the emails and the phone calls that, you know, Oshawa's been getting, and we have a school coming next year and it's still a problem, you know, I can't imagine what a community that doesn't have that forthcoming would be thinking about. And so maybe use some of their anger and use that to fuel the letter, because it's one thing for us to say this is necessary and important, but I think sometimes governments forget that the people on the ground are the actual ones who are feeling it the most. So just a recommendation.
Thank you, Trustee Pinello. And again, as the motion says, the chair and the director will take that under advisement and to make sure that the letter will be reviewed by trustees before we send it out, to ensure that we accommodate some of their comments. I've got Student Trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that I fully agree with the motion, and also that I think it's important to focus on Whitby right now. We're building 2 schools in Pickering. We're building a high school and a public school in Oshawa. We've submitted for Whitby and we've got nothing. And at this point, you know, if we say, okay, well, we really want Whitby, but we also really want some more in Pickering and some more in Oshawa, is the effect of our letter going to make a difference? So I think keeping it focused on Whitby, where I think our most critical need for a school, I saw something like 800 kids are in holding schools. That's a full elementary school. So I think it's very pertinent right now.
Thank you, Student Trustee Ben Cameron. I'm going to go to Trustee Oldfield.
I am a student. Thanks, Chair Edwards. I just wanted to say, yeah, I don't see this as, you know, a geographic issue for trustees. I mean, we're elected in an area, but we're tasked with, you know, doing the best for the board as a whole. And I think what you know, the fact that there are schools slated to be built and hopefully on time to alleviate some of the pressures in the other areas, I think it is a concern that there's nothing slated for Whitby, and I support the motion completely.
Trustee Linton.
So for you, Chair, I support the motion as is, hearing some of the arguments and thoughts on the floor. But we'll be back here having a conversation based on the pressures in Pickering, North Pickering, and the challenges in terms of the transportation and some of the concerns we've heard from parents. So I fully support this motion.
Thank you, trustees. And just on a note, you know, I agree with Trustee Oldfield is that it is a board thing, even though it's, you know, we support all our municipalities. And just a note, we had this issue with the previous board around Oshawa schools, and we had to push, and it was 6 submissions 6 submissions before we finally get, and now we're still in the situation where we've got 2 schools. They're not being built until 2026, I believe, which really doesn't, help with the accommodation pressures right now, and exacerbates the problem, actually. So, anyway, so we have a motion on the floor to request the chair and the director to write a letter to the minister around the accommodation pressures in West Whitby. We had a first and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. All right. Any I'm sure we have more questions around the accommodation plan, so I'm going to start off with Trustee Thatcher's on the list at this point in time.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. And I hope this is an appropriate time to ask the question, but I was wondering if we have an update around Clara Hughes Public School. I did express some concerns about some of the students that were moving over to Village Union, that they, I believe, had to cross 2 very busy roads, Wilson and Ritson, to get over there. So I was just a little bit concerned if there's been any feedback in that area and where we're sitting in terms of numbers at this time.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The boundary review did follow through, and we did, shift some of the student population over to Village Union. We have not had any negative feedback on the travel that way. We also have had somewhat of an increase in some of the grades at Clara Hughes, and we are looking at a process to find relief for those grades, and looking to neighborhood schools that are underutilized to try and balance that as well. So right now the situation at Clara Hughes is stable, and as well at Village Union, those new students are settling in. We have not had any negative feedback here. I don't know if the area superintendent has heard anything different. So,
Trustee Linton.
So here we are, Pickering Creekwood. Okay, so just wondering if there's any updates. Again, living in the area, seeing more houses go up, seeing the grids strained. I think we've had numerous, through you, Chair, numerous conversations around it being 2024, then 2025, then 2025, then 2024. Any updates? And again, what is the communication plan and strategy for parents to keep them abreast of what's happening?
thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So after this evening's meeting, which is a public meeting, we will work with the communications department to get something out to the school community, letting them know that we have had to postpone the opening from 2024. We are in regular contact with the city. Their last submission to the Ministry of Environment was the end of May. It's a 16-week turnaround. We've just reached the 16 weeks, so we are reaching out again to get an update from them. On our side, we've done everything we can to get everything ready. So we're working closely with our ministry analyst. They've had the project in there 4 months, so they've had it to review. It's sitting there. We need the site purchase for them to be able to give us the approval to go to tender. So we've tried to move everything along that we possibly can that's within our control. We need the Ministry of the Environment to release the site to the city so that we can buy it. We are ready to buy it. We've had our appraisals done. We've reached out to the ministry to get their approval as well, which is part of the process. Even though we use EDC money to buy it, we still need their approval. So we're ready to go as soon as we can get that clearance from the Ministry of the Environment, or the city can get the clearance from the ministry.
Supplemental, Trustee Linton.
Yes, so I understand Trustee Cunningham has been an advocate for this as well and attempting to connect with our municipal counterparts. Is there anything we as a board, whether through letter or other, can do to support this?
Appreciate the question and appreciate the frustration, and please know that we share the frustration. We really have done everything we can on our side, including encouraging at every opportunity and saying anything we could that might light a fire. I think the truth is the Ministry of the Environment is running an independent process and ensuring that they do their diligence and ensuring the record of site condition is good to go. So I think if it was a matter of political will, I do believe that the councillors were committed to getting the school built in Pickering, and they did everything they could to advocate on behalf of the city of Pickering. So it's always nice when we have advocates in our corner, and appreciate your offer. I think we're up against a process right now that is a staff process ensuring that they're comfortable releasing the site. So if it was a matter of political will, like I said, I think that certainly we'd suggest contacting the Minister of the Environment, but I'm not sure that that's fair in this case, because they were upfront about the timelines for the process. As much as we thought we may be able to get them to expedite, they certainly are. They are taking the full time to do their due diligence. So I think that, you know, the positive is the Ministry of Education has been primed. They understand the need in this area. They understand the timeline. We are still optimistic that it can be a mid 2024 school year opening, and we'll do everything we can to expedite that.
Student Trustee Ben Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I've got several comments, so bear with me, and I hope to use all of my time. My first question is around the Envision Durham plan, which to my understanding was before Bill 23, which would mean then that the additional population from 25,000 homes is not in that plan. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, well, they were sort of coming out around the same time. The Envision Durham plan was in development for significantly longer before that. Envision Durham is, if you go on the website, is sort of a massive collection of studies and documents. So what they produced was sort of the culmination of that, but it was a very long process. Bill 23 came in towards the end of that.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
And there's lots of language about boundary reviews in the report, and I have to say that I did very much enjoy the layout of the report and how it, I think, addressed everything very clearly. So there's 3 boundary reviews that are laid out for 23-24 that are kind of, I'm gonna assume are almost certain to happen. But there's probably a dozen other times that boundary reviews are mentioned. Could we look forward to maybe more than 3 this year or into the next couple of years?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Boundary reviews are a significant undertaking, so we try and focus on our highest and most urgent in any given year. The other thing, so the short answer is that would be it for this year. But the longer answer is sometimes we need to wait for trends to sort of, really show themselves. So on the surface, it looks like, oh, we should do a boundary review. But if we're too hasty in doing that and we don't have a bit of longer term data, we run the risk of doing a boundary review and then creating actually a underutilization in the school that used to be overutilized. So it truly is a balancing act and a really, looking at several years of data. So some of the schools that we're experiencing, sharp and significant growth with now, we need to make sure that it's not going to dissipate just as quickly, that it is truly long-term sustained growth before we would consider a boundary review, which is a permanent solution, and we certainly don't want to go back and revisit a boundary in anything less than 5 years, and hopefully 20.
Excellent, thank you. As well, I'm curious about West Whitby, as I kind of talked about earlier. In here it says that we actually have 900 students, not 800 in Whitby Holding Schools. I'm just wondering, when we're doing our capital submissions, what kind of size of elementary school are we looking at submitting proposals to for the ministry?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. From our discussions with the ministry, so 2 years ago, we weren't successful with getting any capital priorities. Last year, we were grateful to receive the North Oshawa Public School in Pickering-Seton. But the year before, and we always do a debrief with ministry staff, regardless of whether we get an allocation or not. But 2 years ago, when we first went in with that school, the feedback to us was, it's small. We were still building our 500 pupil place neighborhood schools. It's not a model that is easy to fit in their financial template these days. The other thing, it doesn't recognize the growth that we have. So we are now looking to build schools in the mid 600 range. So 636-ish, 650, around there. So with that, the models that we're picking from the design guidelines with the ministry, because this whole new process we have, we are looking at those mid 600 pupil place models, and then we'll tailor that up or down, maybe by a classroom, depending on what those enrollment numbers tell us. Will be a long-term sustainable population, because that's the other thing. We want that school to be full, not only for the next 5 years, but going forward as well. So mid 600s.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for the report. I'm going to try to move through my 3 question comments fairly quickly. My first one, and for trustees who want to follow along with what I'm talking about, I'm looking at page 127 and 151. Sorry, this will be mostly Oshawa related, but it's applicable to all of us, so thank you. My first question is, I'm looking at Northern Dancer on the page 151 fold out for us, and I've gathered that the color coding means green is we are at capacity, but we're okay. Yellow is this is not looking great, and red is we are on fire. So with that understanding, Northern Dancer is at 186%. And I know we have a new school opening next year, yay. But I also saw in the report that that's going to be at 100% utilization. So I guess I've answered my own question now. I was going to ask, is that new school going to be enough to help relieve some of the pressure? I feel like no. So I'll attach it to my third question, which was about on page 127, there are currently 3 undeveloped elementary school sites and 1 secondary school site owned by DDSB in Oshawa. And one of them is the Winfields Farm, which will be opening. One is the secondary school. And then the other 2, so this is question 1. When can we start submitting for those schools, knowing that the new North Oshawa school is going to be at capacity, Northern Dancer is going to be at capacity? And my second question is, I'm looking at, again, page 127. Eastdale is listed 8 times as the holding school for secondary. We know that Maxwell is far over capacity. It has been since the year after I graduated, so for a long time now. And when I'm looking at the development, I'm specifically interested in the UC Towers one, because this is our first example of high-density living in North Oshawa that's not student housing. There's another tower going up now, and we have split those families and students into 4 elementary schools, 2 secondary schools, and Eastdale is very far from the UC Towers. And so my second question is Eastdale going to be able to hold out that long until 2026? What other alternatives do we have, especially knowing that there's already enrollment constraints within Eastdale? So those are my 2 very loaded questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Okay, I'll try. If I missed something, please let me know. So first, the new, and this is not going to be good news, the new North Oshawa Public School that's under construction, will not provide relief to Northern Dancer. It's taking students from the west side of Simcoe that are currently in holding at Dr. Phillips and Elsie McGill, and if I looked at Sunset Heights and Stephen Saywell, so it's taking a lot of those students. However, one of the sites that you mentioned up there, Symington and Steeplechase, we own already, and it is between Northern Dancer and the new North Oshawa Secondary School site. So it is one that we are definitely investigating for a capital priorities, one of our capital priorities submissions. As far as being shovel ready, it's quite a strong contender in that we already own the site. Just sort of a comment on sort of timing of purchasing sites. Sometimes we purchase them because we need them right away. Often we have, when the development is created, we get an option on a piece of property and it has a sunset. So occasionally we do have to buy property that we may not need for 5 or 10 years, but at that time it's exercise your option and purchase it, or forfeit it and lose the site. So that's why sometimes there seems to be a disconnect between why we own a site and why, you know, in an area that we're not needing it right away. Ultimately, we will need them all. It's just a matter of timing. So Symington and Steeplechase, owned site, it would be, we're working on a capital priorities for that one. As far as sort of Eastdale, so withholding for that whole sort of North Oshawa area, we initially had students going to RS McLaughlin. As of this year, RS McLaughlin is essentially full. It has as many portables as it can take. It certainly doesn't have the flexibility of site that Eastdale does, which being a much larger site. So now students are coming down into Eastdale. We have capacity to put quite a number of portables on that site over time. And as well, I'll sort of add into that, it'll be interesting to see sort of what the yield is out of those towers. Traditionally, we don't get a lot of a student yield out of high-rise construction. Over the years, it's quite low. We do get more secondary students from townhouse developments, and most of our elementary students come from more, single-family, low-density development. So we are monitoring it to see what type of yield we get. But I would say don't be alarmed sort of by the size of the tower, the number of units. The yield isn't equivalent to that if we had built that many single-family homes. Did I miss anything? No, okay.
Everything's fine? Okay, Trustee Pinello. I have Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Edwards. I'm looking again at the green, the cautionary, and the red. And you know that I am super excited that we're opening Beaver River next September. But I am looking at the 418 capacity, but we're going to be opening with 585 students, and you're recommending we're going to have this many portables. Then I'm looking 3 years down the road where you're predicting we're going to have 700 students and 18 portables. That property could never accommodate that. So I'm thinking, what will our plan be? Not only for 24, but 25 through 27.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I guess one thing I should sort of add about the projections, the enrollment projections that go out for the 5 years, don't assume we've done anything to address the growth. I guess if we were allowed to just grow and grow and grow, this is what would happen. So at some point, we will have to go in, and that's where sort of all of the information in this document will come into play. How do we address that growth? We know we can only take maybe 8 portables, on that site. So how do we address the growth? A lot of it will depend too. We've assumed a certain pace of growth, but we have, and we do know, and we are noticing that development growth, I described it earlier today, sort of like a slinky, like it sort of, comes along, it slows down, and then it speeds up, is contingent on interest rates, on, how, quickly developers, they might delay a phase of their development, or then they might, move directly in and build really quickly. So all of those things will come into play. We do have development pending up in the north, outside of within the Beaver River, catchment area. So we will see how quickly that comes on, and using this information, we will have a plan for how to accommodate it, and not in 18 portables on the Beaver River site. Okay.
Any other questions? Trustee Linton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So, again, as we're looking at numbers, and as Trustee Morton alluded to, over the next few years, we're seeing continued growth. And of course, that's now having an impact on our transportation system, noting that DSTS is doing all they can. So I'm not too sure if this is directed to you or the Associate Director, but we're hearing and receiving the emails from our parents around the concerns of the transportation system and maybe not being up to par given the number of students it's trying to move in any given day. I'm wondering if anyone can speak to a strategy that we are looking at as a board, or the need for a strategy to support this growth, as well as trying to, get our students who require busing to school safely.
Associate Director Wright to begin with, I guess, at this time. Thanks.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And appreciate the question, Trustee Linton, and appreciate that you are bearing significant brunt in terms of interacting with unhappy parents and families with the level of transportation service. I think that the frustration is due to a number of reasons. I think a big one is that people don't like the walk distance and other policy decisions that have been made. With respect, Durham Transportation Services, Durham Student Transportation Services does a great job of enforcing the policy that has been set for them. And the policy decision really is not in their hands. It's in the governing body. So, and I know it's a little bit more detailed than that, but if significant change is required in terms of providing service level to families, then that's something that needs to be revisited. Durham Student Transportation Services is working within the parameters that they've been given. So, and they're busy. We transport 30,000 students a day with a very limited staff. So I think they're doing the best they can with what they've been given. But like I said, if people are looking for fundamental change, then they need to be given the opportunity to make fundamental change by reviewing their policies.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions around as far as Ajax schools, and I understand that when it comes to, I understand that in some ways we're a little unique because we're one of the areas where there is a consideration where we have a huge pressure on a school and another school that's under-enrolled. I'm just wondering around the timing of the consultation around those processes, and when for parents, and I know that there'll be lots of engagement, particularly on the Eagle Ridge and Rosemary Brown possibility of a boundary review.
Great, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. We are looking to bring our recommendations for boundary review to, or recommendations, information on boundary review to the board later this fall. We want to provide fulsome time for consultation and community engagement with resulting in probably a February decision so that we can implement it for staffing. So I would say in the next month to 2 months, we will be bringing those recommendations forward.
Thank you. And just, I know you somewhat touched on it with student trustee Ben Cameron around with the building homes faster sort of thing, affordable homes. There are many ministry zoning orders that are being put through, or approvals, even using the additional powers that mayors have been given to approve subdivision or approve high residential areas. And I'm just wondering how much of a consultation process do those municipalities give school boards?
Thank you. We are notified of the proposals and the changes. On some applications, we're given the opportunity to comment. Some, like the minister's zoning orders, we are made aware of them, but there's very little opportunity to provide comment. Having said that, a lot of those, I know there are 2 large towers that were recently approved in Ajax. The build out for those is probably 7 to 10 years or so, but it will have a significant impact, on our resources. We have time to work towards addressing those, but yes, they do create quite a bit of impact for us.
Thank you. And just to comment, I have more concerns on transportation when it comes to where some of these ministry zoning orders and these new developments are happening. Considering, I believe Ajax is the most tiered bus routes. I think it's more or less 2 to 3. As mostly 3-tiered busing, and traffic is just horrendous within Ajax, especially when the areas that they're planning to build even higher density. So I have some huge concerns on that issue. Thank you. Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. This is a really quick one. I'm looking at page 153 for us, or Appendix C for you. It is the secondary enrollment numbers. Is GL Roberts red because they are underutilized, or is there something else that I don't understand with these numbers that would put them in the danger fire zone?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So red can be significantly under or significantly over. Same with sort of yellow. It would be we're edging up, high, or we're starting to decline low. So it sort of covers both ends of the spectrum. Green is the sort of good band in the middle.
Okay, so green is the safe zone. So I guess my quick question is, would we ever reach a point where we would consider maybe sending students to GL because they're at, I think it was 47% utilization, which is a huge underutilization, and it's a beautiful school. But I'm curious when and how we would consider maybe sending students. They're obviously not North Oshawa students, but if there are central, more south students, instead of sending them to, I don't know, like a McLaughlin or an Eastdale, or I can't think of a school that's just south of that, but if you understand my question, I'm sort of trying to figure out how we make use of the space that we have instead of adding portables necessarily to existing spaces.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The challenge in Oshawa is most of those students are coming from North Oshawa, and the transportation time to get from there down to GL is extensive. The middle band, Central Oshawa, the schools are sort of like O'Neill. They're sort of holding their own. But it's all that northern pressure, yet balanced against how do we get them there. That's the challenge with using GL.
And again, that's the transportation challenge that we have mentioned, where we don't have the dollars and to transport the students to these areas as well. But who wants a student to travel a very, very long distance? Because we have those issues as well. I appreciate the report and you answering all the questions, Lisa. And I believe that's the end of the questions at this point in time. I'm sure trustees will have many more as things come up. But again, thank you so much for the report. And it is a well laid out report and has all the information there. Thank you for your time. Moving on to item 13C, Special Education Advisory Committee. I'm going to stand over to Trustee Oldfield or Trustee Miller. Trustee Miller?
Oops. Thank you, Chair, and I'll make this short and sweet. I'm bringing the SEAC committee report. So SEAC had our last meeting on May the 25th. SEAC committee conducted the parent guardian survey, and we had the initial results were shared with in more discussion and dialogue and planning when we return to meet on Thursday this week. As well, in collaboration with our consultant firm Maximum City for our multi-year strategic plan, they met with SEAC, and that input will be brought back with our multi-year strategic plan that will be brought back with the board. And that concludes my SEAC report.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Any questions for Trustee Miller? Okay, moving on to the OPSPA report. I don't see Trustee Cunningham here. I'm wondering if Trustee Oldfield would like to speak to the OPSPA report.
I don't have a report at this time.
Thank you. Seeing no report there, there are the days of significance as far as in the package. Seeing no other business, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.